Good evening, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news. And this is some big news, talking about the numerous different crimes that Hunter Biden has been involved in, and that there is a current investigation going into it. Of course, I'm sure they only have maybe one agent on it because they have to focus all their efforts on MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump. So they have to pull all the other resources away from other crimes, to make sure they can arrest as many Trump supporters as they can, right? Or pro-life, parents or whatever, anything that goes against the Biden regime, they must do. So there's probably one lonely agent on this case. While apparently they're getting close to deliver charges on Hunter Biden. Now, if he is going to be charged, I want him rated by like the FBI, the CIA, the ATF, every agency imaginable. I want converging on his house at 5 a.m. in the morning, with news crews all broadcasting live and him walked out in his underwear with handcuffs. That's what I want to see. That would be equity, as Democrats would say everybody gets the equity, right? They seem to get the same treatment as everybody else does. That's what I would like. That's what would happen in a just world. However, I don't think it's going to go down that way. He will probably get a lesser charge. And then he'll go ahead and play out. But let's go and take a look, see what they built already against them, and see how this will go down. Coming to us from the Daily Mail over here. It says federal agents have enough evidence to charge Hunter Biden. Would tax crimes make any false statement while buying a gun? Bombshell report claims decision lies in the hands of U.S. Attorney in Delaware. Federal agents who have been conducting a long-running probe of the president's son Hunter Biden, and believe they have significant evidence to charge him with tax fraud, making a false statement on a gun permit. According to a bombshell report in the Washington Post, federal prosecutors have made no decision on charging Hunter Biden with a crime, and his lawyers blasted what they called a DOJ leak, demanding an investigation that anyone who put out this information. Hunter paid an outstanding tax liability back in 2020, and acknowledge a probe into what he called his tax affairs. The investigation was sparked by his business dealings with foreign countries while Father Joe was vice president, and the charges could include failure to pay income tax, money laundering, and failure to meet reporting requirements of U.S. tax law. The case is being overseen by a U.S. attorney in Delaware. Biden and the AG Merrick Garland have repeatedly said they would or leave the case to career prosecutors, to paper-cited anonymous people familiar with the case. The gun purchase matter relates to a standard paperwork for purchasing a fire weapon on the form Hunter denied using unlawful drugs, and being addicted to drugs. He has disclosed his own memoir that he was addicted to crack cocaine, and has struggled with drug and alcohol abuse. Images found on his infamous laptop, which emerged weeks before Election Day in 2020. And which experts who analyzed the data told DailyMail.com is authentic, contain images appearing to show crack cocaine use. Emails traced to the laptop also pointed to an array of business activities in China and other locations. He's also secured a lucrative board position with the Ukrainian energy firm and did business in Pakistan and other far-flung locales. That gun matter is the type of the prosecutor sometimes charged and sometimes overlooked. But according to the DOJ figures cited by the Post, there were 478 referrals for line on firearm forms. The year Hunter Biden's purchase, with charges filed in 298 of those cases, the crime carries a $250,000 fine and up to 10 years in prison. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain vouched for the president's son in a TV interview in April. Of course, the president is confident his son did not break the law, Klain said, but most importantly, as I said to matter, that's going to be decided by the Justice Department, by the legal process. It's something that no other White House has involved in Hunter, as properly and legally required. We believe the prosecutors in this case are diligently and thoroughly weighing not just evidence provided by agents, but also all other witnesses in the case, including witnesses for the defense. That is the job of the prosecutors. They should not be pressured, rushed, or criticized for doing their job. Hunter's business practices have come under increased scrutiny as media organizations continue to probe the contents of the material derived from Hunter's laptop. He and Biden's brother James were reportedly paid an estimated $5 million by Chinese energy giant, claiming also told ABC George Stephanopoulos. I want to be real clear. These are the actions by Hunter and his brother. They're their private matters. They don't involve the president, and they certainly are something that no one in the White House is involved in. The trove of emails, though uncovered on Hunter's laptop, which is willing to repair shop owner says someone resembling 100 dropped off the rubber hair shop and never picked it up, includes emailed making references to an apparently dysfunctional tax situation. You need to get 2017 files so we can try to go work out a payment schedule. His accountant Bill Morgan wrote him, and the message on CNN said it authenticated at the time the IRS was still pinging him to make sure due on his 2015 return. They want $158,000, Morgan wrote. IRS has notified the State Department, and they will not renew your passport until this is resolved. And it's quite comical that Ron Klain continues to say this is a private matter. And that does not involve Biden, because it absolutely does. There are numerous recordings of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden on there talking about these types of business dealings and things that are currently going on. So there is a direct line from Joe Biden to Hunter Biden and all of these business dealings that were done, and foreign nations on the taxpayer dime. This is immediate grounds for removal of office. Will the Republicans in Congress, even if this man is not charged, will they go after Joe Biden and the criminal organizations that are running the government right now? Alright, folks, let's get into the Trump news and into Durham news and through the Clarence Thomas news. The Court of Appeals has ruled that they are putting a stay on the work of Derry and they're not allowing him to view the documents as a special master. Okay. This is very interesting. Let's get into this. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has stricken as strikes again. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on Wednesday granted the Justice Department's motion to expedite its appeal to Judge Eileen Cannon's order appointing a special master to oversee the documents seized from Mar-a-Lago last week. The DOJ moved to expedite its appeal of Cannon's order appointing Raymond Deary as special master. The Justice Department is asking the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals to order all papers be filed in the case by number on November 11th. And hold any necessary hearing in the case as soon as that briefing is completed. The federal court's appeal on Wednesday side of the Justice Department and granted its motion. Having consulted with the chief judge, the appeal will be assigned to a special merits panel, and that panel from the classified appeals log randomly selected by the clerk. That panel will decide when and how to hear the oral arguments. So now there's an expedited schedule where all this has to be done by November 17th. And no extensions are allowed. So remember, Judge Eileen Cannon last month appointed the former FISA judge Raymond Deary to oversee the review of the documents. He actually brought in someone else that also has clearance to look at these things. And everyone signed off on it. But now the desperate DOJ of Biden is desperate to stop the special master from reviewing the documents. Obviously, they have something to hide. The Supreme Court has told the Department of Justice to enter response to former President Donald Trump after he asked the nation's top court to vacate a partial stay against him in the Mar-a-Lago records case, and this is what Clarence Thomas has done. He has directed the DOJ lawyers to respond to Trump by 5 p.m. on October 11th, so he is asking that they respond. Trump asked Supreme Court to vacate a partial stay entered by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. The partial stay blocked us. District Judge Raymond Deary serving as special mastering case and Trump lawyers from reviewing the records with classified markings that were seized by FBI agents from Trump's Florida home in August. In other words, they don't want him to do the job of a special master that he was supposed to do. And Trump's that I have no red dressed. I have to go to the Supreme Court over this. The 11th Court is screwing us over. The DOJ is getting their way, the whole system is corrupt. We need something, and luckily, blessedly, it is Clarence Thomas, who was appointed by George H.W. Bush. He oversees 11th Circuit of Appeals, and he has ordered that the DOJ respond to Trump by 5 p.m., October 11th, in about a week from now. Wow. Additionally, the ruling enabled the government to resume using those records in his criminal investigation into Trump. So the special master can't do the job. That's a special master going these things, but the DOJ can continue going after Trump. And Trump says no, you need to vacate this day. You need to stop this thing that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has done. And Clarence Thomas says okay, DOJ, you gotta wait to respond to this. The DOJ gets their way every single way. Every single time we are in tyranny, folks. The application to the Supreme Court argued that the first part of the order was improper, because special master appointments are not appealable. So the DOJ appealed the special master who's reviewing these documents and said nope, you can't review these documents. And Trump's folks are saying you can't even appeal, that's not even something that can go to the appellate court. And the appellate court heard this and ruled wrong on it. And they've asked the court to ask action swiftly. Their hands are tied, but the DOJ can move forward. Quote, "This unwanted state should be vacated as it impairs substantially the ongoing time-sensitive work of the special master. Moreover, any limit on the comprehensive and transparent review of materials sees an extraordinary rate of a president's home erodes public confidence in our system of justice. Who the hell has confidence in our system of justice? I share his holdout." And sure enough, they're not asking justices to rule against the other part of the appeals court order. Wow. So for now, DE remains prevented from seeing the materials with classified markings. A lane judge can't really do much. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen after the attorneys review the documents, and lists which ones they believe are protected by privilege. DeEra go over the assertions, and recommend them to Cannon by December 17th. So now he's been relegated to more administrative things than the actual special master review that he actually brought in another FISA judge who is completely clear, has a top secret clearance. So they'll do things. Now they can't do it, but the DOJ can continue on their case against President Trump. Now, let's move over to John Durham. Special counsel, John Durham and his team cannot tell jurors something very important. They can't tell the jurors that the primary source for the anti-Donald Trump dossier, Igor Danchenko, was the one who actually had links to Russian intelligence. In other words, that the Russian collusion actually came from Hillary Clinton and the FBI and the DOJ. They can't present that to the jurors in the case. They're allowed to say, hey, they were investigating Igor Danchenko, but they can't mention what they were investigating over and what his ties are, which is very interesting, because this isn't a filing. This is public. We know about it, but when the jurors go on there, they're not supposed to know about it, but we're publicly talking about it. This whole thing is wacky. Special counsel John Sherman's team cannot tell jurors about how the primary source had links to Russian intelligence. A judge ruled on October 4. The FBI opened an investigation into Igor Danchenko. The dossier source after a colleague of the Shenk was tipped off authorities saying the Shenko had said he could get the person money in exchange for classified information. The FBI and DOJ did something very slick here, which we analyze in a previous episode, which I will analyze again here, because I don't assume that everyone watches every episode ever made, and remembers every detail. And these are the kinds of things that slip through the cracks, but they're very important. Some of the cracks of our memory, but they're very important. The FBI investigation advanced their agents after they learned that the Shenko had been in touch with the Russian embassy and known Russian intelligence officers, and had in the past been interested in becoming a Russian intelligence officer himself. Okay. But this happened in 2010. They closed the probe because supposedly the Shenko had left the country. Now, the Shenko in 2017 told his agency had contacts with multiple people who he believed were Russian intelligence officers. That means his fake dossier was actually Russian collusion, because this guy was claiming to have contacts with Russian intelligence. So what did the FBI do? And I mentioned this before we broke it down. But here's the short version. They made him a confidential source, a human intelligence source. Therefore, they could stop everything under the guise of, we can't disclose anything because that would be letting people know our confidential sources and methods. They put him on the payroll as an informant, as a special contact, so that they could shield their chicanery, their skullduggery, their treasonous, traitorous actions. The Durham's team asked a court in September to let prosecutors as Scott Watt discuss what the FBI learned during the investigation. Quote, "The government anticipates that a potential defense strategy at trial will be to argue that the defendants' alleged lies about the sourcing of the Steele reports were not material, because they had no effect on it, could not have affected the course of the FBI investigations concerning the potential coordination or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Thus the government should be able to produce evidence of this prior counterintelligence investigation as direct evidence of the materiality of the defendants' false statements, so the FBI knew back in the day about the Shenko. And they should have known that the Shenko was not trustworthy, that he in fact was bragging about being connected, and suppose it was connected to Russian intelligence. Therefore, they should have known that he wasn't a reliable source about all these things. And that the FBI was investigating him and they dropped the investigations, and because he has appointed left the country, but they do not want. They ruled against Jerome. They do not want him introducing to the jurors that the real Russian students, the real Russian collusion was via the Shenko on behalf of Hillary Clinton in the FBI. They're arguing restaurant how the FBI hired Tishenko as a confidential human source in 2017 and continued to paint him through 2020. The committee that reviewed the Shako before his hiring knew of the prior investigation, and the agents have on the probe raised no objections to using the Shenk was a serves as a source according to the defense. As an initial matter, those facts obliterate the government's argument that any alleged false statements were material to the government's ability to evaluate whether Mr. Dushenko could have been working for the Russians all along. U.S. District Judge Anthony Trenger sided with the Shenko. And he, of course, is a George W. Bush appointee. They hate Trump. They are part of the deep state. They're the warmongers, they are the true pedos. And they are trying to bury Trump. And they're not letting this go. The Shenker was charged with 5 counts of lying to the government. And make this stuff up, folks. It can't even let the jurors know that the real Russian collusion came from the FBI with their informant, that they knew had connections and investigated, and he lied. They can't talk about that Russian connection. So the jurors, if they're not watching this show, and not lie about it, will only hear the side of the FBI that, oh, we need to do this because we thought he might be a Russian. There might be Russian collusion. But the defense can't say what the real Russian collusion came from the guy that you said was your source. Can't make this up. Folks can't make this up. Now, I told you there's 3 parts, right? There's 3 things too. That you get coverage when you are in the deep state, right? You're part of the thing. You get to commit crimes with impunity. So any of your age, inappropriate perversions. You get to do those wanton acts, and you're covered by the CIA, who recruits in the first place. They like people like that, because it can control them. They'd like judges and politicians that are part of the shenanigans because they can control them. And they say, hey, you're here. You can continue those crimes with impunity. You'll have power, you'll be on positions of leadership. You'll be on the on this committee and that committee, and you will win awards, and you will be a famous politician or a famous bureaucrat, whatever the case may be. But the other thing to remember is also money, and boy, is there large money laundering going on through Ukraine. Here's Glenn Beck talking with Chad Robocall, the founder and CEO of Mighty Oaks Foundation. This is what he saw on the ground during his most recent of several trips to Ukraine. Thanks for sticking around. Follow me daily. I will do my best to show you. There's a lot of information that shows what's going on. Remember where we